What is compression? Compression is essentially a volume control. It's used to turn down the volume in an audio file. Compression reduces the dynamic range in an audio file. The dynamic range is the distance between the softest sound and the loudest sound in an audio file. With pop music, usually the dynamic range is around 3 decibel to 6 decibel. When you're looking at less compressed music, such as like classic rock, it's going to be above like 15 decibel. So when the dynamic range is around 3 decibel, all of the sound in a piece of music sounds as though it is at the same volume throughout. This can lead to a very bland and fatiguing listening experience when it has a very limited dynamic range, which is why pop music, it tends to be more fatiguing because it's so heavily compressed. What I have here on the screen is a basic channel strip compressor that comes along with Pro Tools. Depending what compressor you use, it can add coloring to the sound. Now with this one, we have the ratio right here. It's set to 1:1 right now, so it's not doing any compressing. But the higher the ratio is, the more compression is being added to the sound. But once you get to around 10 decibel, that's when it really starts to turn into limiting, which is really extreme compression. Most pop music is probably going to be around 5 or 6 decibel for the ratio. Often there are multiple compressors stacked around 3 in pop music, which is what really helps level the sound. So it's all about the same volume. With the first compressor added, it can be up around 8 decibel and then go down to like 6 or 7 for the next 2 compressors. The threshold determines when the compressor actually kicks in. So by adjusting this knob, you can be adding more compression or less compression. This will be visualized right here, usually with an orange bar that jumps down. This is called gain reduction when you see how much compression is actually being added. So a lot of times it's around -6 decibel. And then over here with this gain knob, which is makeup gain, you're just going to turn that back up and it's going to make up for the gain reduction being added here. For the attack, a really fast attack is usually used on sounds that do not have important transients in them. A transient is just the loudest point in a piece of sound. With a kick, you wouldn't want a fast attack because you don't want to get rid of the transient. You want to preserve the transient so that has a nice punch in the final mix. So usually for a slower attack, it's going to be like 20 milliseconds or later, depending how much of the transient you want to preserve. If you're compressing vocals or a bass line, typically you want a faster attack, so you'll be more like down here. So if you want a faster attack for say like vocals or a bass line, you're going to bring this knob all the way down here. For the release, this determines how quickly the compressor lets up. If your release is too fast, then you're going to get pumping, which is just a sound that you get when you can actually hear the compressor working, and that's not usually desirable. Sometimes people use that as an effect, but the release is usually determined by the tempo of a song. So for more dance music, you're going to have a quicker release, but for like slower songs like ballads, you're going to have a longer release. The attack and the release are the most important components of a compressor. They affect the sound the most. That is essentially the basics of how a compressor works and what compression is used for. Compression is very important in pop music, as everything in pop music is heavily compressed, and you can get a louder sound by using compression. Compression is a great tool, but overdoing it is going to cause a lot more issues than it's worth. Depending how much compression you use really depends on the piece of music that you are working on and the genre and your own personal taste. Some people like more compression, some people don't. Like it or not, compression is tied into popularity of music nowadays. Everything is heavily compressed, and that's what people are used to listening to, and they're probably not going to pay as much attention to your song if it's not as compressed, but not necessarily. So that's something to keep in mind. Thank you for listening. I have more videos posted on my page if you want to check those out, and I have more tutorials to come. Have a great day.
Heart thumping, blood pumping, sweat running. I'm a victim of your love now.